today we call on this meeting here to advise the Minister of Economy the projects that we are embarking on and the financial implications that will have, and to get him to acknowledge that there is going to be a lot of money used in the infrastructure development and going towards what we do, the resilient infrastructure, and to let him know what is coming in the future years for FR, especially the major capital works, the two projects that we want to talk about today. So the first of them projects is, I'll just throw it on the screen there. This is the extension of the 4-lane that started from between Nadi-Lautoka, so from Lesoso, where the 4 lanes is there to date. We're extending that all the way to Novutu roundabout, but at Lomo Lomo we'll do a bypass to the village, 9 kilometers of bypass, and stopping at Warimbatia, and then from there we'll continue duplication of the existing lane. So that's the first of them. It'll cost us about $100 million to do that job. So that is one of the projects. And the second one is a freeway between Suva and Nadi. I think this is something that has been discussed before. You can see the drawings are down there in front of us. So from Mendakutu straight to Nandi Back Road. It is about 107 kilometers at the moment, but I believe by the time we finish with all our detailed design, it should be about 120 k's or something around 20 k's. And the cost of it is about 1.5 billion we're looking at now. But this is just pre-feasibility, and then once we get into it, and talking to the Minister, he's happy for us to go ahead with this. So both projects. For the 4-laning between Nandi and Lautoka, we're already in the design stages, so we expect to start construction 24 and get on our detailed design right now. But, and from here, we'll just give it to the Minister to let you all see guys at it. I'll throw something, maybe we'll give you guys this access to these videos. This just shows 360 of the project and what it looks like in terms of which way we're going and the locations that around us. You can have it's on the Google map. We'll send links to this. The other one. You can see all the locations where we're crossing through. Any questions on this thing, you can send to us later on. I'll just keep it soon.
Thank you, CEO. I mean, we've obviously been discussing this also prior to the budget delivery, but we've had some further discussions. Just in respect of the Nadi-Lautoka, as you know, part of Nadi-Lautoka is 4-laned, just coming out of the airport towards Naisoso. Then, of course, there's an existing 4-lane in Lomo Lomo, just past Sambeto turn off the Lomo Lomo flats. So the idea is to do the balance of about 17.5 kilometers of 4-laning. We want to ensure that it's also built to climate resilient standards. So the idea is to get all the cabling underground all the way from Nadi to Lautoka, all the electricals, the TFL, and of course ensuring that Water Authority of Fiji gets all the pipes and all of that in tow together with it. And that 100 million cost reflects all of those works to be able to ensure that we have, the footpaths, the street lights, footpaths all the way from Lautoka essentially to Nandi, get all the street lights, get all the underground cabling done. As the CEO said, that we're looking at the construction starting in 2024. which gives them time. They've already started some design works.
Yes, sir.
I know some people had said there's no work has been done. Obviously, there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes, as you can see from the diagrams that have been put up. And in terms of how we'll be funding this, obviously through some budget support, we're already having a couple of discussions with some of development partners who are quite keen on providing assistance in terms of financial, whether there's a grant component or some loan or concession loan component. That's some of the things that we are currently will be negotiating at least in the next year to 18 months or so, with the construction to start in 2024. This will make life a lot easier for those people in particular residing between Nadi and Lautoka, and of course in Nadi and Lautoka. Nadi and Lautoka, as you know, is becoming more like Suva and Nasori. And you can see that the land use is also changing between the two cities, or Nadi soon to be made a city, but at least between Nadi and Lautoka. So again, it sort of adds to that. And I think if you then link it up to the second project, what the CEO is talking about, which is the direct line you see, essentially just outside of Lami, all the way to Nandi Back Road. As he pointed out that, it's about what 107 to 120 kilometers between those 2 points. So if you have a freeway concept, a tollway, freeway, it could be perhaps a toll, but even if it's just a freeway, you can set the speed limit at 110 kilometers with 70 miles. You could easily travel within an hour. You could be living in somewhere near Navosa and could get to Suva within 30 minutes. So it means that the population can spread out a lot more. The people who own the lands in Navosa and Nanronga up there in Serua and Nomosi, the value of the land, the interior part of the land will also go up. There will be demand, people want to build homes, etc. But it also means that we can, from a national planning strategic perspective, require that all freight trucks that currently you see meandering around the coast, either on King's Road or via Queen's Road, it will become compulsory for them to use the freeway. So you have only essentially one-way route that they can use. It doesn't slow down traffic in other parts. The wear and tear is only on one stretch of the road. In particular, those trucks that are carting goods between the two ports, Lautoka and Suva, or Suva and Nandi, which will mean that the flow of traffic will be good. It will also mean that the wear and tear on the other roads will be reduced. So it ticks a number of boxes. And so in that, we're looking at about 2 years of design and construction to start in around about 2025, the actual physical construction to people be on the ground. Normally with these large projects, we have normally a number of contractors. They can be designated, 20 kilometers each, whatever it may be, different sections. In that way, you can get it up and running fairly quickly, but you can also ensure quality control. And there's also competition between the contractors too, which in some countries what they do is they also have some type of a bonus system, incentives. The towers in Malaysia, the KL towers, the 2 towers weren't built by one company. They're two companies. Whoever completed first and better quality actually got a bonus. So you can build that kind of concept within our roads here. Economically, it's highly significant because it opens up Viti Levu. As you would also know, if you look at the map, there's already a road that goes up on the west coast of Valley Road, goes all the way up to Bukuya. And Bukuya, then if you turn turn left, you go down to Nandi, Nasori Highlands. If you keep on going straight, you'll end up all the way in Ba. So, it also makes those roads a lot more accessible. So people who are suddenly in remote areas suddenly are no longer in a remote area. So it does open up enormous potential for Viti Levu, which we believe can be realized through this road connectivity and construction. So we're obviously working on this behind the scenes, doing quite a lot of work, and we want to ensure that these timelines that have been put in place, and we've been discussing that, will obviously be adhered to. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Questions? Any questions?
What are the duration of these projects?
So For the Nadi-Lautoka, it's 3 years. We'll do the construction, and for Suva Nadi, it's 6 years of construction. But we'll need 2 years of planning and design to come before it. Otherwise, that 6 years will turn into about a much longer period if we don't plan and design things initially.
So FRA has got some very state-of-the-art survey equipment.
Survey equipment now. So we managed to acquire this through projects that's going on now around the Kings Road and Kunst Road, and we're training our team to be able to use all the state-of-art engineering surveying equipment, and that will pay dividend in our second projects that we're doing feasibilities by ourselves, and they're able to do things much faster. And I think currently in Fiji we have the state-of-art equipment, and I think we're comparable to the New Zealand or Australia at the moment.
Any other questions?
And what about in terms of contractors? Are there enough contractors who will be able to handle this project?
Yes. So 100% of contractors are not here. We will have to import maybe about 2 or 3 more contractors, because we already have other works going on now. But you'll see that during the COVID period, we didn't have international contractors. But we saw, we spent, I think, about $450 million during the first part, thank you, sir, and then 360 million thereafter. So we spent a lot of money building the roads, and these were done majority by the local contractors. So now we have developed the local capacity to able to take on some projects like this. So once these projects come online, little bit of help from us, and then now because they've learned how to use their working capital, I believe the banks will also be much more lenient to them in terms of lending them money to be able to get their plant capacity, and we'll have human resources problem, I believe, but that is what we will need to fill with the contractors from outside. I believe 2 or 3 contractors will have to come in here, but can be done.
So in terms of Rashida from Fiji, sorry, in terms of manpower, we are facing an issue in terms of manpower in the construction industry. With this 2 major capital works going on, what sort of difficulties do you see, and how can that be mitigated?
Well, I think the CEO just addressed that issue. I mean, in terms of human resourcing in different areas, like for example construction, there are obviously certain skill sets that may be lacking because of a couple of reasons. One of them can be where you don't have enough people trained, or a lot of people have migrated, because there's a huge demand for those skill sets in Australia and New Zealand. The example that we used previously, when there was the Christchurch rebuild after the earthquake, a lot of our people went there. They were given short-term visas, and a lot of them now have been given permanent residency. If you look at Australia and New Zealand, there's a huge shortage of people in the construction sector, huge shortage. A huge shortage of people, whether in the nursing sector, aged care services, all of those areas, there's a huge shortage of those people in those skill sets. Now, in terms of road making, it's not bricklaying, so it's not that particular skill set. I was talking to a civil engineering company just last week. 4 engineers have gone to New Zealand because there's a shortage of engineers in New Zealand, but they're offering, the amount of money that they're offering is, like 3-4 times, which is incomparable to what can be offered in Fiji. CAF recently lost about 5 or 6, people from Civil Aviation Authority, which Papua New Guinea is offering like 5 or 6 times the salaries. So there is a demand for a lot of Fijian skill sets, and as the CEO is highlighting, this is why you may need to get contractors from outside too, who could then bring in people, not necessarily all of them, but some of them. So that has to be managed through the construction process, when the awarding of the tender process. Yes. They always look at that. So I think the positive thing is that we have a lot of young people too. 65% of the population is below the age of 35, so there's a lot of young people, and we've seen now an interest in what we call vocational studies or, in those types of area, what we call blue-collar work areas. There's a lot of money to be made in that area. So a lot of people are changing what we call their professional preferences. In the same way that a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand no longer want to work in the hospitality sector because of COVID. A lot of people sort of died in one particular area. So there's few people who want to become nurses. There's an article I just saw this morning that New Zealand is facing a shortage of healthcare professionals because they're also being poached by other countries, offering them a lot more money. So what they're going to do is they poach our people. So because of COVID, we're seeing internationally there's a movement of labor in particular countries that are changing their professional preferences. The same way in Fiji too. Many years ago, a lot of people didn't mind cutting cane physically. Now many people don't want to cut cane. They've got other professional preferences. The workplace has become a lot more, workforce has become a lot more educated. So I think it's nothing to sort of fear as such in terms of, because the contract process will take care of that issue.
Could you make some comments about the job creation for the youth?
What about it?
This will employ what? How many people this possibly employ? And what benefits could there be?
Normally when you have, in particular, large construction works, as you've seen, and this is one of the reasons why outsourcing is really good. See, when you have a particular department and you have people working in that particular department and you don't outsource, you're limited by the number of people who work there, right? So the capacity is limited. But if you are going to do outsourcing, there's a number of companies there. So a lot more companies can actually be employed to carry out a lot of projects simultaneously. Now, if we said to FRA to do all the construction in-house at the moment, it'll be very limited. But at the moment, there's, how many companies you got at the moment working?
About 10.
About 10 companies, right? Now, there will be some subcontractors too from that. So they're employing people, so it creates a lot of employment. So a large project like this obviously will create a lot of jobs, enormous amounts of jobs. So, the people living in the interior parts, a lot of them could be hired. They would be close to home. They don't have to travel long distances. And as a contractor, you would want to then hire people who live close by to your construction site. So they would be given first preference, in terms of some of the areas, the skill sets that they may have that they could utilize. So it'll be huge impact. You can imagine, as the CEO highlighted, it'll cost $1.5 billion over a period of, say, 6 years. That's a good amount of money being spent in the community. Even with this Fijian $100 million, with Lautoka and Nadi, 17.5 kilometers. Again, huge demand for people to come up with these skill sets and they'll be employed. It also leads to a job creation, significantly. Yeah.
Just one thing with the minister, I just want to add on to, all the manpower that human resources have left us, especially in the roading industry. I'm very positive that the companies they're working for in Australia and New Zealand, they will bid for this job. And you'll see they're coming back in this market, back to Fiji and staying back in Fiji for 8 years. I think who wouldn't want to do that? So we'll see the teams coming in, and it's going to be a very good training ground for our the university students that are coming out now. They'll all get a job. I'm very sure if you're in the civil engineering industry and you're diligent with your study, you will get a job in here. Because at the moment, there aren't too many people.
Any other questions?
Would you highlight some of the ripple-down effects of such investments into the economy?
Well, one of them obviously is employment creation. The other, of course, as we said, it opens up the island. It helps actually establish what we call satellite commercial centers. Obviously, when you're going to have 120 kilometers or 110 kilometers of road, people want to stop and maybe eat McDonald's. They may want a service station, want to stop and have a bathroom break. People may want to stop and enjoy the view of the interior of Viti Levu. Maybe somebody will set up a restaurant. So those are the kind of spin-off effects. The people who live around that area, they'll be selling fruits and vegetables. There could be markets set up along the way. And then, of course, a lot of people want to build homes. People want to lease land and build homes. Imagine living in the middle of Viti Levu and 30 minutes to Suva or 30 minutes to Nandi. It takes you an hour to get from Nosori to Suva during peak period. You know what I mean? So, but also it will mean there's less pressure on a small amount of space. That small amount of space is between Suva and Nosori. When everybody wants to be here because their workplace is close by, then the cost of the land goes up. Cost of homes go up. But if you've got a lot more land there, firstly, the landowners there will benefit because people want to be interested in their land. They'll be wanting to pay good lease money, but it'll still be significantly inexpensive compared to Suva. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. Government is also, for example, giving grants for first home construction. Those earning less than $50,000, people want to very easily build more homes. So those are the spin-off effects. And also in terms of the agricultural produce that's grown in those areas, easy access to the markets. People in Nanronga, Novosa, Serua, Nomosi, Naitasiri, all those places who may be growing root crops or any other crops that they're growing, now it's very easy access for them to reach the markets. In fact, there would be markets set up along the way. People come and buy from there. So the cost of them to travel to the markets will be reduced. So more margin for them. Any of the footpath from Nadi-Lautoka, you can take a nice long Sunday walk from Nadi to Lautoka. But it also frees up, if you see the alternative routes, it also frees up the existing roads too. So that's the existing road there.
We go bypass that way. So it'll free up a lot of traffic that's in that area.
And these kind of roading systems also, reduces the opportunity for accidents. Because, imagine the Queen's Road, people get frustrated, long windy roads, there's trucks, there's buses, there's all sorts of, all different types of traffic there. People get frustrated, try and overtake. They want to get there quickly. But if you've got people traveling between Nadi and Lautoka, and the trucks, on the freeway, then obviously there's less accidents. And the standards that FRA will be able to build even on the freeway, there'll be better, wherever needed, better lighting systems, all those types of things will be built in. Okay. No more questions? Wait. Assume.
The RDF's macroeconomic committee just yesterday released a statement on the GDP outlook. Would you like to get some time on that as well?
Well, we're obviously very glad, very happy with the revised growth rates. It does give us more fiscal space. It means obviously that the policies that government had put in place is working, and working in fact very well. As you know, that our initial projected growth rates was much lower than 15%. There were some entities that had predicted it would be higher growth rate. ADB had revised it from 8, I think, up to 11, 12. ANZ is still out there. They're saying 22 or 23%. But we've obviously seen that the tourism numbers have escalated quite significantly. We had initially projected that we'll have at least 55% of the pre-COVID numbers, but it's bordering now close to about 65, I think 63 or 64%. So we'll wait and see until the end of the year, and God willing, and get even more in terms of the tourism numbers coming in. But it's not just tourism per se, but other sectors, as you know, agriculture sector. The RBF, or the Macroeconomic Committee report, had highlighted the agriculture sector has also grown. Projects like this will obviously help. So we're very glad. It comes on the back of the Moody's rating, or the positive outlook for Fiji. There's obviously risks always built into that, and as they highlighted, the risk, of course, is for us, which is always now a major risk, is climate change in terms of climatic events. cyclones can set you back. So those are some of the risks that we have built in. I mean, nowadays people talk about another risk, which is, could there be another pandemic? But we seem to have gotten over that. The other risk that is, of course, outside our control is in terms of what is happening globally. If the war, for example, in Russia, Ukraine escalates into something bigger, it could have a much bigger impact. Inflation, as you know, which has been driven by the COVID, and also the Russia-Ukraine crisis, has led to inflation in many countries getting out of hand. You've seen recently, for example, governments change, or prime ministers change, I should say, in UK 3 times in a very short period of time. And a lot of it, as you know, has been driven by the economic considerations. The previous one essentially not getting the economics right in terms of the game plan. And that obviously has led to a change. I think, for us, what really signifies the sort of decisive leadership that's been provided, the decisive steps in terms of the economic outlook, some of the steps that we took, for example, in 2020, anticipating what would be the result of the COVID implications. So we anticipated that well in advance. So as a result of that, our reserves remained very buoyed. We had liquidity in the market, and obviously there was, in terms of socio-economic safety network was there. There are 3 considerations we had. The first one, of course, is because we are largely an import-driven country. So we need to ensure that our foreign reserves remain buoyed. So we changed the lending permutation, or borrowing permutation, I should say. Secondly, was in respect of the making sure that we have liquidity in the market. But once the economy opens up, people will need access to finance, and the cost of that finance needs to be curtailed, or it needs to be measured. So you need to have liquidity into the system, and the liquidity was brought into the system by borrowing more from offshore as opposed to borrowing from onshore. And the third, obviously, was in respect of you had what are the sort of industries that we'll be focusing on, and that's been critically important for us. And liquidity has been there. The economic stability has been critically important. And the last one, of course, is that the socio-economic stability. So we made sure that people actually had food. You had the $90 payout, 2 rounds of 50, the 360, the FNPF contribution that we made for FNPF members. That kept food on people's table. That also ensured that the economy remained robust, because when you pump in that type of money through unemployment benefits, whether you call it the FNPF one, whether you call it the 2 rounds of 360, it put money into the economy, because at the time of a contracting economy, you don't contract it even further, as some people have suggested. Unfortunately, they don't know the realities of economic and financial management. You do not contract an economy that is already contracting, because that will lead to further job losses. You need to provide some level of impetus, some sort of energy into the economy. So by pumping in money through the 360s and the 90s and the 50s and the FNPF, we were able to kill a couple of birds with one stone. One, of course, is that we made sure that those people who did not have access to funds or lost their jobs actually had access to money. Secondly, when they went and spent the money, it actually created economic activity. So if I went and got the 360 and I then did my shopping and I went and hired a carrier, the carrier driver got money. Or I had a taxi, the taxi driver who previously did not have a fare, now actually has a fare. So that created robustness within the economy. And, as we've seen, the last point, of course, was the decisive step in terms of no jab, no job policy. Can you imagine if that was not put in place? Can you imagine if that had not been put in place? A lot of people would not have gone and got the vaccine. If they didn't get the vaccine, we would not have been able to open up our borders. Even if you open up your borders, you would have a lot of people who would look at Fiji and say, let's not go there because the rate of vaccination is very low. I feel scared because I don't want to catch COVID, period. So it's not only about the vaccine, it's not only about helping you look after your health, your family's health, your community's health, your country's health, but also how others viewed us. This is why you see the rate of tourists that are coming to Fiji. The Australians last month, more Australians came in last month into Fiji than they did in 2019. 109% arrivals. compared to 2019 arrivals for that month. So you see, because they feel safe in Fiji from a health perspective. Of course, you then have a national airline. There are many people who wanted us to ground the national airline, wanted us to shut down Fiji Airways. If we had shut down Fiji Airways and listened to their nonsensical advice, can you imagine when you opened the borders on the 1st of December, and we would have been twiddling our thumbs because they would have, Qantas would have said, well, we'll come, maybe 1st of January, and New Zealand said, well, we'll come when we decide. Virgin, whenever they want to come. Then we said, oh, we'll come, maybe on the 19th of December or something. You would have been beholden to the fancies of other people. When you have a country that's so heavily dependent on what we call the hospitality sector, including the services sector, BPOs, etc., you need to have control of at least one of the key supply chain areas, one of the components. One of them is airline. Majority of the people who come to this country as tourists come on Fiji Airways. Right. People are eating the plane on TikTok. Right. Now, that's the kind of short-sighted attitude they have, or policy considerations they have. We now have more people working in Fiji Airways, more young people being employed, job creation. Recently, when I was traveling, I met a lady who used to work at Roops, Big Bear, who is now a flight attendant. Great story, actually. I used to spend about 20 minutes talking to her. So, you see, young people are being given opportunities that previously did not enjoy. So, it's a result of those sort of economic considerations and strategic planning. As a result of that, now the economy is growing in excess of 15%. And God willing, it will grow more. But as I said, there are various risks also in terms of climate change.